last time, so Jackson Pollock. So, I'm not used to this microphone like that. Everybody was disappointed about the Italian Renaissance, and we had our town meeting and everything. So I talked to Linda Blanding, and we thought it'd be a good idea as a substitute. We'll just bring in an Italian. So here I am. I wanted to get Patty, but Patty wouldn't do it. But actually, this Italian thing really works into what I was talking about. The first time I did this talk is that we're a nation of immigrants, and in New York, how many of us are first and second generation here? Right? There's quite a few of us that are first and second generation. And from New York, I know Terry's from New York, and Daddy's from New York. I'm from New York. There you go, from New York. And so, when you think about it, and when I talked about the regionalists, they were still at the stage of trying to create this American art. What is an American painting? From George O'Keeffe and Thomas Hart Benton, they're all saying this is American art, and this is the first abstract expression, the first uniquely American art. And most of these artists, not Jackson Pollock, but the other ones are from New York. They're first, second generation Americans. They're Italians and a lot of Jewish people from Germany, and they're all escaping Europe. And so what they want to do is to create something that is really anti-Europe, something that is their own, that they can hold on to. And those of us who grew up in these immigrant families know that our parents would speak Italian or whatever, and they didn't want the children to. They wanted so much for us to assimilate. And part of this whole, if you look at it, I was also a social studies teacher, so I spend a lot of time thinking about the cultural implication of these things, is that it's it's not just about the art, it's about the time they lived in. And see, I'm Italian, I talk with my hands, I'm a stereotype. But, so, I just thought that that's one way to look at it, and those of us who had that experience, and I still continue to seem to live in this immigrant world because so many of my relatives still have those accents and all. It's a different way that you so much want to live that American dream, and that's what a lot of those artists were. They just wanted to have something that was uniquely American, and Abstract Expressionism said it. And so, and here they are protesting. This is the group of the Erascals at the Museum of Modern Art, and there was a show that time, and these are all the Abstract Expressionists that protested because their art wasn't in it. And I just want to point out one guy. This is Barnett Newman. There's a video, talk about YouTube, it's on YouTube, it's called Painters Painting, and I highly recommend it. It's a video of a lot of these artists in this era, and that I'm going to talking about their artwork. And he's this funny guy. You think of Abstract Expressionism as some kind of far out guy, and he's got his pants all the way up here and a mustache, and they're all sitting around smoking cigarettes. We all remember that too. Remember when everybody was smoking cigarettes and we're sitting there and they're drinking and smoking, and it was just a totally different time. It's kind of something that we all remember, but not people that come to the museum remember. And I think that's another thing that we have to share, because we kind of lived through the era of when these paintings were important. We know we remember that Jackson Pollock cover, or just that, we've heard of it when we were growing up. Just like we know who Grandma Moses is, and lots of kids don't know who that is. So, anyway, I can do this now. This is Barnett Newman, and I just want to. I'm going to go back. I just want to go over a couple of points about Clement Greenberg too. I just want to refresh our memories, because go back. There it is. About Clement, why it was important to him as an art historian is that he created this whole language about all over painting, off the easel, flatness, and it's a whole idea of painting that was totally different than what was going on. So we all thought of at the time, you know, painting has to have a subject, and then now it doesn't need a subject anymore. And this off-easel thing is probably the most radical thing is that, as we know with Jackson Pollock, the canvas is on the floor. There's no easel anymore. And in this, if you watch this movie, they're all talking about this, about being off the easel is very important. Now look back. So, this is Barnett Newman's painting, First Station. And First Station, so apropos, because this is Ash Wednesday, and this is from the First Station of the Cross.
Oh.
Yes, and it's 14 paintings. Let me find my notes now. Not so close. 14 paintings, and he was famous for the zip painting. And the zip painting was that he took a piece of masking tape and he put it in various places on the canvas. This is it right here. And it was a very simple thing, and there's, last year, this painting called 1 Minute 6 that he painted in 1953 sold for $43.8 million in auction. And so it's interesting because he's very controversial. But there's one quote, and this is a good quote from Robert Hughes, that historian. He said, "The belief in the production of the sublime that puffed up so much writing about abstract expressionism was part of a period style. It was the intellectual's version of American gigantism, a confusion of pretentiousness with scale that has plagued American painting ever since." And that whole idea that just because you do something big and outrageous, it makes it good. And so Barnett Newman in particular was one of the people that talked a lot. He had a lot of intellectual reasons for what he did, but then the product was not always that visually stimulating, maybe. And there's another quote about this particular show, The Stations of the Cross. It was from superb to the New York Times criticized the Guggenheim for lending it walls to such pretentious yardage. In other words, and it really does, you know, but that's why I have this one here, this quote from art is what you can get away with. In some ways it's true, in some ways not. But the whole idea is that in this era is art is transforming into what is important about the painting, and what is important is about everything is meticulously thought out, about each little brush stroke he did, how he applied the art, the paint, where he applied it, and these, the ratio, these dimensions are all very well thought out. And so this just keeps going in different versions of it, kind of like those Robert Motherwell paintings. And it was thought that some people thought he was memorializing the Holocaust in it, and it was also about just sadness. And that's another thing about abstract expressionism is the high emotional quality, which we know from Jackson Pollock. So he was a really interesting, I gotta tell you have to watch this video on YouTube, Painters Painting, because it's like rare footage, because you don't normally get to see these people talking, and it's about their art. It's really a fascinating thing. Andy Warhol's in it too. He's crazy. He really is. I don't have anything by him here, but he is just the oddest guy. And you all know, like, he went to church every morning. He was, but yet look at his life and what he did. It was just, he's just strange. It's really a strange but fascinating kind of guy. And this is Robert Motherwell, and he liked, again, was a very intellectualized everything he did. And this is the painting we have upstairs. And you know, on this thing I was listening to about getting rid of line and using line. And one line we don't think about so often in these paintings is that they actually use the line, the outline of the canvas. So part of the whole thing is this actual line up there too. So that's another thing you can point out to people, that it's just not the line on the canvas, it's the line around the canvas too, as part of the design. And so this, this Robert Motherwell that we have here is not that exciting. And he did this about 70 times in all different ways.
Oh, I think it's very exciting.
Well, I know, my personal opinion is, it's not very exciting. As I tell my art students, you stop using yellow ochre, I hate it. So, it's a muddy color.
I hated this in the very beginning. And then as I started learning more about it, now I love it. I had an eighth grader tell me, that's the color of crap. That's the color of seed.
That's yellow ochre. It has its purpose. I don't know if he picked it because of that, to minimize the vibrancy of it, if he wanted it that, but he did it 70 times. And maybe if it was large, it might look different. But I welcome anybody has a comment on anything I say, please chime in.
I had an art teacher on the tour as we were going around, and he was telling the children what that each thing was.
Mm-hmm.
This one was the rectangle, the square represents the actual painting. But then he's trying to show us what goes behind the painting as you wrap the canvas around. And that's the leftover canvas. That's what he's talking about. It's the leftover canvas that wraps around the back of the painting. Oh. He was quoting all of these things about every piece of art that was so off the wall.
But this is what he's famous for. I'm sure you've all seen these in your visits to different museums, the Spanish Elegy to a Spanish Republic, and they're all based on a poem by the art critic Harold Rosenberg, was also friends of Jackson Pollock, and there's this small world that they all lived in. And the pivotal moment in this was that the great moral issue of this is that from the Spanish-American War is that society can actually regress, and that instead of us being a forward movement, things can go backwards and get worse. And he called this a funeral song for something one cared about. And so I think you feel that in these paintings. And has everybody seen them somewhere or other different places? And they're big, and they're really, you just can't help but go, wow,
Don't we have one here?
Did you say Spanish-American War or the Spanish Civil War?
Spanish Civil War, I'm sorry, thank you, yeah, Spanish Civil War. And some of them are there, think of their meditations on life and death, which they are. So there's all different things you can see into it. It does feel like a life and death kind of thing, with the black and white, the starkness of it, the kind of sad anger. And there's all different things. I know you're not supposed to use BTS for non-conversational art, but sometimes you can get a conversation going about the shapes and things. Yeah.
It kind of, well, in psychology, any psychologist, looks sort of like the ink blot test.
Right. Yeah, the Rorschach test. It does, and so that's why they're fun. We don't have this one, but the other ones are fun to talk about. To talk about them in that way is that they're very emotional, and it's all about. It's also very good composition. If you do, the rule of thirds in composition of how you divide the canvas, and you use, you never use like four things grouped together. It's this rule, it's like when you look through your camera meter and they have that thing, it's called the rule of thirds. So this is kind of divided into thirds, and you have three objects, but they're not grouped together, and it's very good balance and composition. That's the art teacher me talking. But, so that's Robert Motherwell, and he was married to Frankenthaler for a while, and some people think that her career was diminished because of him, because he was kind of a male chauvinist. How surprising! But it was really a boys' club, and she was one of the women in this boys' club, and so because her painting was softer and less vigorous, maybe. It was all mostly male critics. She has like a mixed bag of reviews for her work for her lifetime. Although, we like her. So this is color field or post-painterly abstraction. And there she is, Helen Frankenthaler. And she dated Clement Greenberg for 5 years also. And so, one of those letters talked about the museum being an elitist organization and that, we all, whatever. But this is kind of why sometimes in the past people might think that the art world is some kind of elitist society because the art critic is dating the painter who's friends with the other art critic, and they're all in the same spot and they're all friends, and it's all this really insulated world that's very difficult to break into, and they're all from New York. You know how we New Yorkers are. We're snobs. So there you go.
Well, artists think they're different. I mean, you have to start from there. They don't want to be part of society.
Well, some of us want to be part of society.
Well.
Not all of them. Yes. No, that's true. It's true that they have very different ways of looking at things. There's our favorite one. So there she is with one of her paintings. She only died, 2 years ago? Or 3 years ago now. And did I talk about this one last time? A little bit. It's a stained canvas. And what I brought was, those who've done, I teach painting at Oasis to older people. This is another one of my stories. All of us went to art school in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of people who take my classes are art teachers. We know nothing about painting, and it's because of Abstract Expressionism. It was so popular then. Our art teachers didn't teach us composition, color, nothing. Just do what the heck you want to do. And so when we go back and try and paint, we don't really have that same basis of knowledge that other people older than us or younger than us might have. So it's kind of a funny place to be in. I don't know, anybody else have that experience in art school? Yeah, it's like, you have the raw talent, but you don't know what to do with it really. So this is, what she did was stain canvases. She took, at the time still using oil paint, and she'd take oil paint and turpentine and mix it and put it, this is raw canvas, unprimed canvas, and she'd paint on top of it. And it created these, I guess you could say diaphanous and effect and like a halo effect. You see that halo effect? This is not a good painting. This was just to show people how, things. And one of the problems with it is that it seeps through. And this will create, this will rot eventually because of that. But I thought I could pass this around so you could just see what, I don't know if you've all seen what raw canvas looks like, and this is oil paint seeping into it. But that's how she created her paintings. And that's why I just put this picture here, because one little kid told me once that this is a dog drinking out of a water bowl.
Oh, okay.
See,
Wow.
the two floppy ears and the...
Wow.
Yes. Maybe. I don't know how I think that's going to be conserved. And I'm not sure, I forgot to look to see, oh no, this one won't, this one's acrylic, I'm sorry. But some for other paintings, Mountains and Sea, which is the next one, is, that's oil. So I don't know how, I know when we went to the conservators' place in Lakeside in Casanova, I think there's things they can do to save it. Acrylics have their own problems, but, because they can peel off a canvas eventually.
So none of her canvases were framed?
I don't know, none of them, but none of the famous ones were. And so it creates that look that, just like a watercolor look with oil paints. And this is, I think she was dating Clement Greenberg when he reviewed it and it became a big hit. Her first thing. But she's feminized painting, and the hard edge of physicality of the other male painters is gone. But she did not want to be characterized as a lady painter. And if you watch that video, she'll say it right there. I'm just a painter. She doesn't want to be categorized, but what you are, comes out in your art. She's a lady. She's a lady. So this is also, she did this in her New York studio after visiting Nova Scotia. I'm trying to remember, I think it's, I can't remember what museum it's at. Somehow I remember seeing it, but I don't think it was in Buffalo. I saw something else in Buffalo. And her, as I said, her reviews, critical reviews are a mixed bag. So some people like her and some people think she's just fluff.
Were there any female reviewers?
The female reviewers, actually that's where I read it from, was in the New York Times, who said that the female reviewer on the New York Times loved her painting. But at the time, some of the male reviewers, no. In fact, it said, here's what the, this is what the female reviewer said. But it's worth the effort to try and see it, and must have been seen before as a cool composition of slender loops passing in and out of diaphanous washes of color, pale greens and blues and pinks, distinctively cubist but feminized, without the harsh edges, angles, aggressive edges, and dangerous vertices. It is like a dance of the seven veils. Yeah. That's that thing. This I put in, this is one of her later paintings, which is the Adirondacks. I thought it'd be nice for us to see some other paintings of these artists in the gallery that they've done. Because, we don't have, in our small museum, we don't have a point of reference. We have one painting, and then you don't really know what else they've done. Just like the Motherwell painting, that's not what he's famous for. He's famous for the Spanish elegies, if I say that right. I'm not good at pronouncing words. I apologize in advance. I can read well, though. So, that does look like the Adirondacks to me, too. And that's lots of her, it's not supposed to be about anything. Lots of her paintings evoke landscape. And did I talk about this? Oh, I did. I thought I did. Okay. Turns out that Gilda said that about artists wanting to live in their own world. Well, it turns out that Helen Frankenthaler was a conservative Republican. Her last husband was worked for the Bush administration in the financial things, and she was on the board that stopped some of those. Which was it? Andrew. When they stopped, they wouldn't fund some of the... No, it was another guy. The Piss Christ one?
Oh, Serrano.
Yeah, Serrano's. She was on the board that said that shouldn't be funded. So she was kind of conservative, and some people think part of the reason why her artwork is not, doesn't get the same good critical reviews is because of her politics. Because it's two reasons. Feminist, she wasn't really a feminist, and she was a Republican. Oh my God. I know. The art world is so political. I mean, it's very political about how you have to walk the walk. You have to have this certain set of beliefs, and if you don't, well, then there's something wrong with you. So this is kind of funny,
Yeah, because who's making that determination?
I know. It's just all, it's silliness. It's really silly. And I think this is the next one. So she was friends with my friend Georgie Bush there. This is the Washington Color School, and this is Morris Lewis, also known as Morris Louis Bernstein, whose father wanted him to be a doctor.
Bernstein?
Yes. So he changed his name, and he lived. He's the Washington School because they're from Washington D.C. And Clement Greenberg took him and Kenneth Nolan to Helen Frankenthaler's studio in about 1955, I think, 52, whenever she was doing the Mountains and Sea, and showed him how she was doing the color staining, or soak staining is another word for it. And that's where he first got the inspiration to this painting. This one is upstairs, Alpha Delta, is part of the Unfurled series, and I'm going to do a demonstration. Like so many of them, he had the canvas on the floor, and then he would he rolled it up. He folded it in half first. So he folded the canvas in half first, then he rolled it up. Then he stained the canvas, and in some mysterious way that he didn't let himself be photographed doing it, these things kind of flowed down the canvas to create these lines, so that you have the big white space. And it was a soaking and staining project that he did, and he manipulated the canvas on the ground, kind of like a sail on a boat maybe, and that's how he got those drips. It was a very intentional process. So it kind of like, when you look at it, you think, well, maybe he, it looks like he could have thrown it, but it was really a soaking and staining process. And he used acrylic paints, something called a magna, and that is and it's an unprimed canvas, so I think it probably would stay. It probably won't wreck the canvas as much as oil paints. But you can see the halo when you go look at it. There's that halo effect on it.
What do you mean by that?
The halo, well, you know, it's very dark, and then it kind of bleeds out to a lighter color.
Oh.
So it makes kind of a halo effect. And when you look at the painting upstairs too, you can see the unprimed canvas. It looks dirty now. You know, you ever notice how it looks kind of dirty? That's why. It's never been primed. If a canvas is primed, you can actually clean it, because you prime it with something called gesso that is waterproof, and you can wash it. But this you can't really. I don't know. I'm sure you can clean it somehow, but I don't know how. And this is another example of that. And you know, Clement Greenberg also influenced him a lot, and he ended up destroying hundreds of paintings after Clement Greenberg went to his studio and criticized what he was doing. So to say that the critic directs the course of history is true. I mean, one year he destroyed 100 paintings, and next year 200 paintings. Oh my God. And it's crazy. It's just like, I wouldn't listen to Clement Greenberg. He didn't. So, and this is the other one, I think maybe you've seen, is Point of Tranquility. And these are two that very much look like Helen Frankenthaler's kind of thing. And you know, I think one of the reasons that he wouldn't let people photograph, I'm going to go back to my point. Remember Jackson Pollock? He was photographed by Hans Namath. Mm-hmm. And then after that, the kind of the mystery of what he was doing was erased. And that's when his whole career went down the tubes. So I don't know if maybe, this is my theory, the Evelyn theory of art history, is that maybe he knew about this. He wanted to keep what he did mysterious, so that it wouldn't, the aura of what he does, the importance of what he does wouldn't be discovered by people. But it's not known how he did this. We know it's soaked and stained, but we don't know how he manipulated the canvas in some mysterious way. So that's that one. These, I know the Corcoran, the gallery has a lot of these paintings. And this is Leon Berkowitz, another Washington, D.C. painter, color, and he doesn't want to be called color field, and it's basically the same process, just a little bit different. And he liked to have the shimmering light, and I think lots of times you don't read in art history books is that a lot of these people are very religious people, and so this is the light, like a religious, spiritual experience that they have. And the next artist, I think it's the next one. Oh, that's just Leon Berkowitz. But can you see that shimmery quality to his artwork there? There he is, Jules Olinsky. He was actually a very religious man, and he painted from sunset to dawn, and this is the painting that we have up in the gallery, but he used a a spray brush, and a spray gun, spray gun to paint his paintings again on the floor. And he wanted to create the feeling that you were standing inside, like you were surrounded by spray paint. And so he was very much into color. A lot of his artwork, also from Clement Greenberg, he was a little later, see that's 1968, so it was the advent of pop art. And his reputation kind of, he kept painting, and he had hundreds of shows, but his reputation kind of suffered because of pop art. He hated pop art because of that, I think, because it eclipsed what he was doing. But he was really kind of, there's this one. Does anybody, did you say that, anybody know?
Shekinah.
Shekinah. Thank you, Shekinah flame. Do you know what Shekinah means?
Ellen?
Yes.
So are all these artists using this technique of diluting the paint and to create this diaphanous halo?
They do it.
The last from Frankenthal
Yeah.
on, it looks like all of these artists liked this diluted paint.
Yes.
So is that what they're using to
Yes, they're using diluted, not
oils or?
both. It was at the era when acrylics were invented in like the 1960s.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
yes.
Well, one of the people that Morris Lewis worked with was Louis Ford, who ended up working with Sam Golden.
Yes.
And they were developing, the Magna paints were Louis Bocuse in conjunction with Sam Golden, the guy that's down there, where we went to visit him as well.
Yeah.
And so they were developing all these different paints at this time. That's exactly.
Right, and they would, the artists would go and talk to Golden Paints and tell them what they needed, and they would create it for them. And see, actually, I forgot my last prop. I brought this. This is just to show you how acrylic paints have changed, and this is regular. These are paints that they're called organic and inorganic. Organic, I always get them backwards. Organic are the ones that are made by man, and inorganic are the ones that aren't. And on this, or the other way around. That's the other way. It's one of those things. I don't think it's important, but one's one way and one's the other way. Then, I'm a little dyslexia. I don't know if I left and right. I know inorganic, unorganic, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. But I know that they're different. That's the important thing. And I'm here, this is just something I had in my art class I thought you'd be interested in. I have interference glazes over the colors so you can see how you create this shimmering effect on the colors by adding a glaze or even adding different things. And lots of things, especially with, this one doesn't have blues, but like the blues, you think that blue is a solid, strong color, but on a canvas, blue is very transparent and translucent, and even browns are very transparent and translucent in a lot of browns and blues you use. And so that's part of the intellectual experiment that these artists were working with, is trying to figure out how to make these colors work, how to make them shimmer. So it was kind of like a science experiment. I'll just pass this around too so you can see inorganic, organic, things. Yes.
I think I've read in more than one place relative to what we're talking about, the chemistry of primers. Morris Lewis died of lung cancer.
Right.
Because he wasn't careful.
Right.
What he was doing.
He died of inhaling the vapors. I think he was only 49, 43 years old. He was young. Morris Lewis died of lung cancer, and they think because of the vapors. Well, even those of you that were art students back then, I remember having a hose of turpentine doing silk screens and just spraying it, your hands uncovered. There was no, we were smoking and using turpentine. Nobody cared, really. And so, some of us were lucky enough to make it through. I could have blown up. Imagine me smoking a Camel cigarette. And the hair was the same, but the smoking. Yes.
Not Camel.
Yes, camel, no filter. I had to be cool, like my art teacher. Oh, don't tell my kids. They think, you know. Don't tell mom. Yeah, don't tell mom. So this is, say again, Shekinah flame. And Shekinah is a feminine Hebrew word meaning God's transcendent presence, the light that occupies everywhere. I think that's a universal theme, the omnipresence of God. And so he felt his painting was very much inspired by his religious experiences. And this is from the catalog of the Revelation. So the whole show that it was in was about that. And the curator from that show wrote, it was at the Phillips Collection, the confession of faith, especially as an aspect of artists' more serious art making, is a subject virtually group censored by and within the art world. The absence of the discussion of faith is absent in contemporary art criticism and history. So, that's one component that is left out. Let's go back to the Italian Renaissance. That's the only reason why people were painting. It's about faith. Or Muslim painting, it's all about faith. And so this is kind of his expression of that faith. It's sort of kind of interesting. He said, what he said about it is, the truth I almost dare not tell. And he wrote, where I live, the Almighty presents me with sunsets, and I'm up after work as dawn is breaking, so I have the best rise and set of what, capital H, he provides. So he embraced the practice of regular prayer and thanksgiving and referred to his life as a miracle. So he's kind of a really interesting artist. Is not, as we say, typical artist, but there's quite a few of them that are very much inspired by religious beliefs and did what they did. It was kind of a joyous process of creation kind of thing. And I had one more example. I wish I could see this in real life, because you see it's that the texture of it. They have these new things in the art store now that you can texturize your paintings with. I forget what they call them. There's some silly name, but he's done it already, and it's just gel medium stuff. It's just beautiful, the use of color. It's as they would say, like a happy accident of the kiln. It's a happy accident when you use paint and the colors just kind of blend together. And I think they, it invokes an emotional response. Oops. That's just another one of his. It's just so very different. And a lot of these artists didn't like to be pegged into a hole. Louis Berkowitz, he didn't want to be called a color field painter. And this is Vimeo. If you search, there's an interview of, did that come out on the slide?
Yes, I did.
Okay, there's a clip on there of Polinsky talking about his artwork and stuff. It's really interesting. It's worth watching. It's probably late. It's later in life, not when he was younger, but. So the next thing that came out was, this is my abbreviated Abstract Expressionism talk, hard edge abstraction, and it was a reaction against all the looseness and the emotionality of the previous generation. And it's Baroque scale, which just means it's as big as this wall. It can be, and it's flat. Well, the Al held upstairs is gigantic. There it is, Al held. And what he did, he took everything that Clement Greenberg said about abstract painting in a lot of ways, except for the flatness. So he went away from the flatness and went back to Renaissance perspective, which just means, 2-point and 3-point perspective. And some of the docents who've been here for a while, I remember this when I was a young docent. Well, I was only 50 then. And somebody said that this was painted specifically for our museum to be like the style of I am painting.
That rumor kind of got started because of me.
Because 10 years ago?
I think he recommended getting it held, but not, it wasn't painted for it. But it was completed that year, the one we have.
Okay. Because I had heard that a long time ago and didn't know if it was true or not, because I couldn't find any information.
Oh, you've heard it too a long time ago?
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
He painted so many of those geometric forms that
Yeah.
Hay was supposed to have recommended the Frankenthaler and the Hild
Okay.
for the opening.
Well, it's a good story, so we might as well tell it. I mean, it does make sense that it fits in perfectly with the design of the museum. So we can say I.M. Pei recommended it. And so all we have, and what I'd like to show you, all we have is that painting by him, and if you would think that's what he is, but he was much more than that. These are his alphabet paintings. And the difference is when we think of Pollock and the other abstract expressionists and Frankenthaler is the emotional quality of them. And this one is kind of cold, without emotion. And it's a very a graphic design kind of thing. And this was the advent of, pop art in the world was changing. So this hard edge abstraction where you control the paint. And he also wanted it so that you would not see the brush stroke anymore. So that's really going back to the Renaissance where there's no brush stroke and it's a very flat and application of the paint. Yet they're very, they're very powerful and they're very big. Then he did, this is the letter X. This is 1984 what he was doing. So he's taken that idea of perspective and really going. It's also if you're Frank Stella did a lot of this stuff. Frank Stella's also on that video talking about the edge of the painting and how he creates it. And it's really neat because he has the canvas on the floor and he's pulling the canvas up from the floor and it's like really stuck, like you could rip it. It's not how you picture they do stuff. I mean, it's like this big sticky mess. it's really different. But these are, you wouldn't imagine from the painting that we have in our gallery that he also did this. So does this speak to people, this painting? How Cookie?
Well, I'm seeing the definite perspective that he's using with the rectangulars and then on the soft curves on top of that. I just like it.
The colors, but do you feel the same, the same emotional thing as you do with some of the other abstract expressionism? No. Well, I don't. But it's really interesting to look at. It's fun to look at. This is Mark Rothko. I put in some of the stuff that's not in here, and I put in Mark Rothko because he's my favorite painter of this whole era. So since I was in the slideshow, I get to pick what I put in. And again, going back to what I talked about earlier, he was born in Latvia, and he went to Yale, and he started creating these paintings. They're called multiforms, and he painted them very big. Very, very big. And he said he painted them big to be intimate, and that he liked them to be in a small room so that the painting would almost envelop you. And I find them very emotional, and I just love them. But I think George O'Keeffe said they'd make a good carpet. But nevertheless, I love them, and they're just the colors. And the same thing that, remember my thing is that halo effect where they bleed on the edges, and it's very like a fuzzy, warm and fuzzy kind of thing going on. And it's just taking the experimenting with the color and the way colors, the relationship of colors. We know all that stuff, complementary colors and all that stuff, and how it works. And it's also he eventually just went to 2. He started out with 3 and 4, then he went to 2. And that's just a picture of where he started from, kind of cubist kind of thing. And he got the idea from Milton Avery. Yes.
Is it the Roth codes that are in that Damonville chapel in?
Yes. It's a religious experience.
And they are also all together, there are several at the,
There's a big,
in
yeah.
Washington, at the,
At the Herschel?
no. at
Corcoran?
the,
Corcoran.
I don't know where they are. I've been to the mall, but
The Phillips Gallery.
The Phillips Gallery.
And
Oh,
they have built-
yes.
They built a little room, and you
Yeah.
go and you sit in there.
the Phillips is the one north of Washington with the house. Little
Yes,
rooms, yeah.
yes.
And sometimes when you go to the museums, they all start blending into one, you know? Yes.
The Tate has, the cranberry ones that were painted for the Four Seasons.
Oh,
For the Four Seasons
yeah, the
restaurant
hotel
in New York.
for
It was
Seagrams.
then- Yeah, Seagrams.
That was, yeah, he did paint this, he was commissioned to do, for the Four Seasons Hotel, these paintings for Seagrams was gonna pay him. And he was, that was precipitated the end for him. He actually committed suicide. His marriage went bad and everything. But he didn't like the whole idea of the scene where there were people eating and all that elitism of the whole thing, and took him down, and it was a big, he kind of, and then his artwork is the person that was supposed to be in charge of all this cheating, and his children got gypped and blah, blah, blah. It's really kind of bad ending. So there was one other thing he said. So there was a lot of criticisms about his artwork not being relevant and not being any good. And he said, silence is so accurate. I like that. When somebody says silence is so accurate, it's that, you know, it's all about what you see. It's not about talking about it and all this other intellectual, you know, stuff. And there's another one. That's the one that was on Facebook for marriage equality. There's a lot of copy of it. Remember? You can post that one. I was so happy. I was so happy to see because, oh look, it's Mark Rothko. Because he invokes such emotions from people. And I was glad that people still knew who he was. That was the other thing. Young people. I included William de Kooning, and because he was also part of the group, but he used figurative drawings. I just have a few more slides. Do I have? Is it okay to keep going? Yeah, fine.
Okay with that? Yeah.
Okay, just 5 minutes. And on that movie Painter's Painting, they show him creating this, and he talks about a woman's mouth and how it's the most sensuous part of the female body and how he's fascinated by it, and shows him cutting. This is actually I think on this one, he cuts out the mouth and glues it down and then paints around it. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, he's kind of it's worth watching this video just for him because he is a very strange and scary guy. He's got this crazy hair in the video, and he's talking about a woman's mouth and all kinds of stuff. And he's
Was he young, or was it when he had Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
I don't think it was when he looked about 50, 60.
Oh, that was young.
Yeah, he was young. And he said, Clement Greenberg questioned him about painting a face, and he said, in today's world, it's impossible to paint a face. This is what Clement Greenberg told him. And de Kooning responded, that's right, and it's impossible not to. And so he said, and he was, you know, he was just abrupt. He was German and abrupt and whatever. He said, what's the problem? It's all about freedom. And that's true. You know, this is what painting is about, is what you want to do. So he's different in that he had the figurative things, but he had that same gestural and large paintings. And he also said it was disastrous to name ourselves. Another artist didn't want to be clumped into that spot of, you know, Abstract Expressionism is a clumsy title. And they show that some of his earlier works, his paintings of men, they're really beautiful, very classic paintings that he did. So he was very, you know, he's very talented. This is just the direction he went into. But he had a very good sense of visual. But you can see the anger in there. And if you listen to him talk, you can hear the anger.
Really?
Really. You can hear it. It's, if you listen to on YouTube. Yeah, on YouTube. And I just wanted to show David Smith as a sculptor who was part of this whole movement. He unfortunately died young too in a car accident, but
Does Everson own a David Smith?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But he just took sculpture in a whole new direction. That's part of it. And that just shows he used spray paint with cardboard to create like images. In fact, that's one of his most famous paintings. I mean, sculptures. This is Franz Klein. I put Franz Klein in because it's just a personal reason. I was at the Johnson Museum in Ithaca when I was in
Cornell.
Yeah, at Cornell. I was visiting a friend at Cornell. We went to the art museum, so I was like, I don't know, 18 years old, and I saw this painting. I was like, oh, wow. It was by Franz Klein. It was just big and large and just so provocative and exciting. And so I just put in one of his paintings. And he actually had small drawings that he enlarged with the Bell Opticon enlarger. And he did it in de Kooning Studio. So he projected his small paintings on the wall to make these large-scale paintings. It's kind of like what it's like what George O'Keeffe did with flowers. Is that changing the size changes everything? And so I included him on there just because I liked him. And he painted in black a lot, and then reintroduced color later in life. So that's one of the later ones. That's just 3 years before he passed away. And, I thought, all this talk about Jackson Pollock, what happened to Lee Krasner?
Right.
There she is. And she always said that her life and her work were inseparable, and she spoke of the necessity of art to communicate on a profound level. So she is preoccupied with trying to know myself in order to communicate with others. Painting is not separate from life. It is not. I think that says a lot about that whole era, about abstract expressionism and what it meant. And she did this one when she was depressed, and she painted at night. And so she felt that at night she couldn't use color. She couldn't do it. And so this is called Night Creatures, and you can kind of sometimes see the faces in this one. So she did it. It's interesting, we have all this talk about Jackson Pollock. You never really see what she did. So I include that. And I just included Louise Nevelson, which some of her work was here once, and she's also part of this era. Found art. She was really unbelievable, I think, what she did. And I just put a couple of things in by her Sky Cathedral. Just taking the principles of abstract expressionism and putting them into sculpture. Yeah. And this was also going on at the same time. So see, realism was not dead. And this is beautiful too. It's kind of like you say you're going to a doctor. Well, are you going to a neurologist? Are you going to a general practitioner? Are you going to a rheumatologist? They're all doctors. They're all artists. And it's this need to classify what's good, what's bad, what's current, what's popular. It's really kind of stupid because it's all just different, and it's just all, I think it's all very wonderful. So I think all of it is great, except that one Robert Motherwell painting. And Richard Serra. I can't take him either, but otherwise everything else is great. I know people love him. I don't get it. This was going on. This is also really cool. I don't know if it's still, I wonder what. Can you see it? Yeah. But this is like, this is what came out of all that, the ability for other artists to do experiments with things, and well, it's really cool stuff. There's no such